Hey, this is our second episode of the M42 Adventure Podcast. Today, my guest is Ryan Michler, a lifelong friend of mine, a high achiever, just an amazing individual. He has the Order of Man movement. He started, I think, 10 or 11 years ago. He's kind of an OG in this industry of podcast self-help and has been doing amazing things for men across the world. He has an Iron Council community, a community called the Iron Council, where you can go in there and meet like-minded individuals, and I'm a member, and it has changed my life. It's an amazing thing that Ryan has created, and I'm lucky enough to call him a friend, long before his movement, and just excited to have him here today and to dive into some of the things that we have in common. Ryan has written a couple books. I've read both of them. Sovereignty is one of them, and the other is the Masculinity Manifesto. So check both of those out. They're great books. I call books cheat codes. I encourage everybody to read books. Get out there if you're interested in, self-help, how to go mountain biking, how to surf. There's somebody that's written a book on it, and you can step in and read that in a couple short hours and learn years of knowledge very quickly. So I encourage all of that. Ryan, today we are going to be talking about fear and expectations of starting a new podcast, which is what I'm doing right now. He's been a big mentor for me on this, and actually is a partner. He came in as a partner and is actually an owner in this M42 Adventure. So about being an entrepreneur, benefits of putting yourself out there and making connections with people. Doing and not just saying. There's a lot of people who, talk the talk but don't walk the walk, and there's a huge difference. Benefits of mentors and leaders, just getting on base, whatever it takes, and some of our stories of hunting together and times we spent together and, making memories over things. So I'm excited to dive into this conversation with Ryan, and let's get started.
I think I just did a quick introduction of what I was planning on doing. One thing I do remember is I remember my first YouTube video.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was in my garage in Hurricane, and I just basically set up whatever camera or whatever I had, and I stood behind the camera or in front of the camera with an American flag behind me.
Yeah.
Like, here's what I'm gonna do.
Yeah.
And it looks so dumb now.
Does it?
I look at it occasionally, and once in a while I'll go back and I'm like, oh man.
Yeah.
And I look so weird and awkward and uncomfortable, but I leave it up there because it's a pretty cool testament to see you go from an idea to action to almost 10 years later.
I love it,
It's wild.
Yeah. And, being an entrepreneur myself, it's everybody says we got lucky, but it's like, I'm starting one. I mean, everybody's starting a podcast.
Yeah.
It's so done. But you were like one of the original. I mean, you've been in what, 10 years?
Yeah.
I mean, what is your
10 years.
10 years?
Yeah, because I actually had a podcast before Order of Man.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, I think I did on financial planning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Called Wealth Anatomy.
Yeah.
And I did it just as an experiment because I just thought it would be a cool way to pick up clients. And
Yeah.
I remember I thought to myself, and I worked with medical professionals primarily, but I thought to myself, no self-respecting doctor is going to listen to this podcast and then become a client of mine.
Yeah.
And I remember I got a phone call it was a pediatric physician, and he was in Pennsylvania, if I remember correctly. And he said, we got on the phone, he's like, hey, I need disability insurance. And then he rattled off all of the features and benefits of disability insurance to me.
Huh.
Do you know anything about disability insurance?
No.
Nobody does.
No, nothing.
The only reason I did is because I was in the business.
Yeah, right.
So nobody knows a thing about disability insurance, but this guy did. So I asked him, I said, well, are you shopping around, or are you like another agent pretending to be a doctor?
What's your angle?
Way too much about disability insurance. And I'll never forget what he said. He's like, oh, I just listened to your podcast on disability insurance and wrote down everything you told me I needed.
No way.
Yeah.
That's rad.
And that moment was a light bulb,
cathartic
moment for me.
Yeah. People listen.
Because you're in their earbuds or their eardrums as they're, working or mowing the lawn or at the gym.
Yeah.
And it's not great, but when somebody listens to something like this, you are the perceived authority, whether you are or aren't. the perception is reality.
Absolutely.
And people believe that you're the authority. And that's why this guy was like, yeah, I need disability insurance. Here's what I need.
And I think that's why most people don't start, is they don't feel like they're the authority. And so they're, they're hesitant. And it's like, man, if you know something, I mean, my dad always says you can learn something from the guy sweeping the floor.
You should.
There's always knowledge in everybody in some way. And to just think that, they don't have that or you don't have it personally is wrong. It's like, everybody keeps telling me, grab a mic and start talking.
Yeah,
and
just go.
See what happens.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to be great at it just because you're curious. I've seen you just, not behind a mic, but just out as we're hunting or on adventures together. And the way you're curious about people, intrigued, fascinated, like this is not going to be an issue. Yeah,
I told Ricky, I says, I'm a little nervous. It's a little intimidating, but I says, I get to wake up today and instead of putting in cabinets or, installing flooring like I used to do, I get to talk to amazing people, and that's what this is about. Enjoy it. It's
such a cool
ride.
I remember 9 years ago telling people just in passing, people would say, oh, what do you do for work? And I would say, well, I have a podcast. And they would say, well, what's your real job?
Yeah. Yeah.
And people still say that today.
Yep.
Because they don't know that if you do it right, you can make a really lucrative business and career out of.
Absolutely.
But you can also serve literally millions of people in the process doing something that you love.
Absolutely.
Having conversations you want to have. And I tell people all the time, I'm the biggest recipient of the work that I do.
100%. This is selfish.
I mean, a lot of people listen in and that's cool that are getting value from it. But as I have a conversation with, name it, Matthew McConaughey, Tim Tebow, Terry Crews, Jocko Willink, Chris Williamson.
Yeah.
Like I'm taking notes.
Absolutely.
Notepad
I'm ready to go.
When I'm in front of my computer doing a podcast, because a lot of what I do is virtual. I've got a whole note section on my computer of notes from years and years and years ago as I'm listening to these guys spill their guts about how to be
you
successful.
Get the insight. I mean, I listened to your podcast, and it's like, man, like some of the things that you get to ask these people, just people don't have access to.
Right.
That's what's the beauty about a podcast is you get to go pretty deep and things can come up that would never come up in a quick 5-minute, 5-second interview on a red carpet or something, so it's, you got a front row seat.
And not only a front row seat, because I'm not just a spectator.
That's true. Yeah, good point. Yeah, you're on stage.
So when somebody says something that I don't agree with, I can say, well, hold on, I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
Can you clarify?
I like that.
Or I don't understand what you're saying. Like, can you say that a different way?
Yeah. So I've never thought about that. Yeah, you're not even on front row. You're on stage.
I mean, front row's great, but man, when you're actually participating in the discussion, it's even better.
Yeah, how many times have you seen a conversation you thought, I want to raise my hand and ask this? You get to.
Or have you ever listened to a conversation that you're excited about and the guy's asking questions or they're conversing about a topic and you're jumping through the radio like, dude, ask this question. I need you to ask this for me.
It's ready,
And they don't.
Yeah.
So I think I say podcast host, but the correct term is a conversationalist.
Yeah.
As a conversationalist, it's my job to think about what the guys listening would want to hear.
Absolutely.
And what questions. A good friend of mine, Jordan Harbinger, he has the Jordan Harbinger podcast. He's one of the greatest podcasters, I think, ever.
Okay.
Like, he's that good.
Mm-hmm.
And he was saying that your listeners, you have to be a mouthpiece for your listeners because they don't get to ask the questions you do. So you have to think about the conversations you're having through their lens and what is it that they would ask?
Yeah.
Or what is it that they would be curious about or not agree with.
Right. Well, and so, we were going to start recording a month ago. It's obviously, this is a startup, M42 Adventures, and we're, 100 days in, all the things that go along that people don't understand, websites, business licenses, trademarks, which set us back, is tough. But I was going to start recording about a month and a half ago. You were going to come in, it was going to happen. And I'm glad I waited because since then I've had some just conversations with you at lunch and stuff. And you said, Rick, your podcast isn't about you. People want to hear some of your stories and some of the things like that. But these people are giving up 60 minutes of their life, the most precious thing we have. What are they going to get out of this? What is going to happen that changes their life? What is the call to action or the information that they're going to be able to take and go on a hunt? Get a bow, get a snowboard and go snowboarding. And that really changed my whole mentality of, this podcast, obviously, it's not a, business planning, financial planning podcast. It's entertainment, to an extent. But then we're going to incorporate where we talk to professionals and people who go out in the field and are professional snowboarders or surfers or hunters or, whatever aspect in the outdoors that they do. And then I want to extract information out of them on how people actually, where the rubber meets the road.
Right.
It's like, I have so many friends who want to get into bow hunting.
I do too.
And they have no idea. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, what? It's not a big deal. But then I have a good friend that's a professional mountain biker. And I'm like, I don't even know where to start. Like, I go to the bike store and there's hundreds of bikes.
Right.
And he's like, well, yeah, it's easy. You want, and I'm like, it's easy to you because you know it.
Right.
And so that's where I want to take this and ask those right questions on getting people to the first step, the second step.
Yeah.
I think a lot of podcasts, I had one buddy tell me that a lot of the podcasts he listens to, it's like, nothing against some of those big players, but they, like, I don't even know a lot of their names, but David Goggins is the example he used. And he says, I'm not going to get up and run a marathon every day. I'm not, that's just too far for me. I respect it and it's amazing, but I'm more the guy who's going to get up and go for a walk tonight around the block with my wife or do 20 minutes in the gym. And so I think there's kind of a gap there we get a lot of these really high achievers and we also want them, but to talk to the high achiever and how did you start? Mm-hmm. Like you're saying with Order of Man, everybody just sees the result. I remember you starting that and I actually called you because I remember when you first started it and I'm like, what is this, a cult?
Everybody said that.
It's a weird name. Back then, it's one of those things where it was different. And now it's like, it's Order Man. It just makes sense. It's brilliant, really, I think.
Yeah.
But when I first heard it, I'm like, what's he doing? I've known you my whole life, most of my life. And, and I know you just faced all those, I just know what an entrepreneur goes through. Mm-hmm. And all the things you experienced where you asked for a podcast and they said no. And you posted a post that took you an hour to write and you got one like. I just know.
Yeah.
And then, 4 years later down the road, I'm like, oh, he's doing something. It's happening. And then I called you to go to lunch and tried to buy in.
Yeah.
I had my checkbook out ready to write
no.
And you said no. Because you did all the bullshit.
Yeah.
You made it. But that's what I want people to understand. And obviously that's a different category on business, but it still applies to hunting. Snowboarding. I was a snowboarding instructor in Salt Lake City.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, at the canyons. And, everybody, just, you see me going down the mountain. It's like, you're great. Well, it's like, you didn't see me the first time I went down the mountain. And I thought, because I was a skier.
Oh, yeah.
And I switched over to snowboarding because it's cool.
It's way harder. Snowboarding's way harder than skiing.
And I remember getting to the bottom of the hill and like throwing my board. And I'm like, this is the dumbest sport I've ever experienced. And thankfully I stuck with it. But people don't see that. And I want to, dig deeper into these people who are professional surfers, professional rock climbers, and say, how did you start? How did you?
I think the interesting thing for me about these types of people, and I've had guys like Shane Dorian as a surfer on, and
awesome.
David Goggins has been on the podcast.
Awesome.
And these guys who are extreme, and the world needs people like that. But it's interesting because a lot of the time, some of the feedback I'll get is, well, we want regular guys on the podcast, and I get a little frustrated when I hear people say that because everybody's a regular guy.
Absolutely.
David Goggins is a regular guy. Go back and look.
Yeah.
He was, probably 100 plus pounds overweight, and he decided to do something different.
Yeah.
Shane Dorian, surfing, Cam Haynes, John Dudley, world-class archery hunters. They're not special.
I know.
With all due respect to them.
Yeah.
And
They put their pants on one leg at a time, we always say, right?
And they just dedicated themselves to something.
Mm-hmm.
They found their thing
mm-hmm.
and spent decades doing the thing. And now this is where they are.
Yeah. Yep.
It's nothing more than that. And I know there's a lot of nuance in how they did it, and we should extract that.
Mm-hmm.
But really what I want people to understand is that the guys who you think are extraordinary are no different than you.
Yeah.
They're just doing things differently, and they're doing it for long periods of time.
Yeah.
And that's it.
And that's a good way to put it. I look at it like my buddy in San Diego, he says that's just unattainable. And it's like, no, it's not. Obviously, he's doing it. Maybe unattainable for you, and we need to break down why. You don't have the willpower, you don't have the time, we gotta, so yeah, that's a good, I like that I think one thing that you're very good at is you've been doing this for so long and you've had so many conversations. I think you're very good at seeing, I've had a lot of conversations with you and seeing you've had these other conversations where it's funny because I'll hear you talking to someone. They'll ask a question. I have my response. You respond as almost a devil's advocate. Mm-hmm. And then I'm like, well, now I believe that. Like, you're very convincing, because the way you explain it like that. I had it set that, this is one way. And then you come in and say, well, at the same time, these men are not gods.
I mean, isn't that the point of a conversation?
Exactly.
I used to not be very good at this, where I would have a preset list of questions.
I do.
And I think that's not a bad place to start. You have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
But there came a point in time pretty quickly for me where I realized if I was asking all of my guests the same questions, and then I had question 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. If I got to question 4 and they answered it, and I have question 5, I'm not going to dive deep into the nuance of question 4. I'm going to go right to question 5.
You're held to it's almost like when we go traveling. The first time I ever went, I planned my whole itinerary for 90 days.
Yeah.
Whole thing took me like a year to plan out.
And it just doesn't work.
And we did it, but then I got to Brest, France, and some lady's like, oh, where are you going? I'm like, we're going over here to La Rochelle. And she's like, well, you should go over here. Right. This is cool. There's some hot springs over here. And I'm like, well, I can't. I booked my room.
No, I got to do this.
I'm done. I'm set.
Yeah.
My it's planned out. And that's something I've changed in my travels. Now I book a week out. I leave for a year at a time. I book 7 days out because you get with the locals and they're like, don't do that. I've had people come here and I'm like, have you gone to Zion? And they're like, what's Zion? And I'm like, what?
Oh my gosh. How
you don't know about it? And they're like, we're coming for the Grand Canyon.
Oh, it's like, no.
And I'm like, bro, Zion to me is way better.
Grand Canyon.
And then they go to Zion and they're like, we didn't even know that was here. We just flew to Vegas, went to Grand Canyon and stopped in St. George on the way. And they're like, thank you. But you miss so much if you do the outline.
I think there's a really important virtue that I've tried to embrace specifically over the past year with just some of my own personal circumstances. And I think a lot of guys overlook this virtue, and that is resilience and adaptability. I guess that's two virtues, but resilience and adaptability. I see grown men crumble. They're so brittle that the slightest sign of adversity and they shatter.
Yeah.
Versus a guy who can take the punches. When you see a boxer, sometimes they're going to get hit. They know they're going to get hit. So it's not always about avoiding a punch. It's how do you roll with the punch? Like, Absolutely. How do you take it?
Yeah.
And so you'll see them feint and they'll tuck, but they'll actually get hit, but they'll feint this way.
Yeah.
That's adaptability.
Right.
It's like you're still going to get hit, but it's not going to cripple you.
Yeah.
And too many
and the fortitude to take the hit. A lot of them, they say he's got a good chin.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
They just take it. And some hits you just don't even dodge. They hit you head on, and it's like.
But then you have to keep
I'm in
fighting.
a fight. I'm in a fight. This is a fight.
Everything is. Your marriage is.
100%.
Guys, they'll have an argument with their wife, and then they'll lose their emotional wits and make it worse than it needs to be, rather than just saying, hey, you know what? Let's take a step back, hon, and figure out why this is what it is. Mm-hmm. Or in business, they'll lose a big client. Mm-hmm. They'll lose 20% of the revenue with a phone call.
Right.
And all of a sudden they're like, oh, business is over. I'm done.
Yeah.
And they start making dumb decisions, and then they blow up their business. It's like, well, okay, yeah, that sucks for sure. We don't want that to happen. But what can we do to regain not only that 20%, but more with a different strategy, something smarter? And I wish more people were resilient. You see guys, and we've had experiences, and we don't have to name names, but even on things like hunts, where, one thing goes wrong, you make a bad shot, and somebody lets it ruin their entire 7-day hunt.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Like, what the hell, man? Yeah. We all make bad shots. We all do dumb things. We make mistakes. And I think that's part of the conversation we can have today, specifically about hunting. But man, you're going to let one bad shot mess everything up instead of just laughing at yourself and showing a little mental fortitude. Mm-hmm. I think that's what more of us need to exhibit.
Absolutely. And I think, like you said, that happens a lot with age and experience, because I know, some of the stories you're talking about, and most of the time they're 10, 15 years younger than us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Fair.
And it's like, hey, there's bigger problems, bro.
Totally.
And it's like at that time, it's like my dad always used to tell me that he says I'd be in, trying to make payroll on my company and stressing out and just didn't know how I was going to make ends meet. And my world was crumbling and I didn't know if I could feed my family and pay rent. And he says, your little sister would come in and be like, the head fell off my doll, Daddy. And she's crying. And he thought, that's not a big deal, but to her, it is. And I'm going to give her the love and support she needs because that's her life right now. And then as stages grow, he says, and they always put it in perspective that we all have our doll's head falling off.
Yeah.
And, that's one thing I've always looked at where I might come into a problem and think this is a problem, but man, that guy over there's in a wheelchair. His problem's a lot bigger than mine. I need to man up and handle this.
And what's interesting? The guy in the wheelchair is, if he has a good head on his shoulders, he's saying, oh, that guy has it way worse than I do.
He's laying in bed. He can't even get out. And that's it. And I think gratitude and being able to see what you have is a huge, huge thing, especially in business, because it's never ending, like you said, just.
Well, and the other thing I think it's important to realize is that, I'm 43. I just turned 43. Everything that in my life for 43 years that I thought was catastrophic clearly wasn't, because I'm still here.
Yeah.
And
life goes on.
There's been a divorce, and there's been, financial struggles and health struggles. I mean, there's been everything, just like we all have. I'm not comparing struggles.
Right.
I'm just saying and you have too. I know you've gone through struggles.
Mm-hmm.
None of it was catastrophic.
No.
Because you're still here.
Yeah. You just keep moving on. And like you said, the better the attitude, the better chance you have.
Yeah.
I was actually telling my kids yesterday, Castle, my oldest, is like 80 pounds, on a good day. He's just a skinny little guy.
Yeah, but he's a fighter too.
Yeah. And I'm trying to get him to kind of bulk up. He wants to play football and stuff. And I read a statistic, and I'll get it wrong, but it was like 95% of cancer survivors have a lot of muscle.
Oh, interesting.
And I says to Castle, that's very interesting to me to understand that when your body gets attacked, if you've prepared it and you have muscle,
right,
you have a 95% better chance of beating cancer, all cancer is said, than somebody who lacks muscle. And I says, that's just preparation. That's getting yourself ready to, go to battle.
I wonder if that's like purely physiological or if that has to do with somebody's
I always wonder that too.
Because, like, for example, somebody who has more muscle mass than the next guy is probably somebody who's concerned with their diet.
Yep.
They're probably somebody who's exercising and treating their body well. They're probably hydrating. Like, they're probably taking
better habits.
Better habits, which leads to. I
always think about that. They talk about if you have. I don't know what the word is, but like cavities, like mouth.
Yes, heart disease, right?
Heart disease.
Yes, I thought the same thing.
And I'm like, wait a minute. There's no way your teeth affect your heart.
It's correlation.
Yes. Yeah, good point. Yeah, so it's like if I brush my teeth and I take care of my mouth, I'm obviously going to be taking care of my heart.
Other stuff. Because you brush your teeth in the morning.
Exactly.
I know. I thought that because dentists say that all the time, and it's like, well, mouth health isn't direct. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. You guys correct me if I'm wrong. But the way I look at it is mouth health is not directly correlated to better heart health.
Yeah.
It's the habits
of
brushing your teeth, having a routine in the morning, taking care of yourself.
Look at most people who have very bad teeth. Right. They also have very bad habits.
Because they're drinking or they're smoking and they're
doing
not
drugs,
brushing their teeth.
whatever it is.
Of course, that's going to affect your heart.
Exactly.
I thought the same thing.
Yeah, and I don't know. That'd be a good one for what's the Huberman or whatever.
Yeah,
it'd be good for him to dive into because
it would.
I just always thought that.
I already
so it's
know
interesting.
The answer.
I know. I think so too.
I don't need Huberman to spend 3 hours.
I know. I heard
why I'm already right.
Yeah. I heard your podcast the other day talking about that, where it's like, I know that this is bad for me. I don't need to dive into it and find out my enzymes and the sunlight.
Everybody knows.
Yeah.
Like unless you've been living under a rock, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
I actually do worry about that. I made a post on Twitter. I said optimization is some people's form of procrastination. And so people will try to optimize every aspect of their life, and they'll say, well, I'm reading this book on this one thing. I'm like, yeah, but you're still fat. Well, yeah, but I'm taking this course on how to make more money in business. I'm like, yeah, but you're still broke.
Yeah.
So like at what point do you start implementing what you're learning and applying it in a reasonable way for actual results?
What did we talk about, Ricky, just 2 days ago? Because, nothing against Ricky, but I got him started reading books years ago. And he came to me and says, I've read 300 books now. And I says, that's amazing. That's amazing. But I think people are so set on saying, I went to this seminar. I went to this, watched this, online study. I read this book. And it's like, that's one step in 10. You got 2 through 10 of implementing it, holding to it daily, It's like you read a book. I said this to Ricky, right? I said, you read a book on how to get a six pack. You don't just get a six pack. You got to take everything in the book and go do it. And I think that's a huge problem with society right now.
I think so too. It's, the term you hear is mental masturbation, right?
Yeah.
It feels really good, but ultimately doesn't complete the objective.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we do. And it's interesting coming from guys like us where, I podcast for a living. I share information on self-development for a living.
Right.
So how can I say simultaneously, like, stop listening to all that stuff and go work? Well, that's the answer.
Yeah.
If my podcast or whatever I share, a book I might write, is impeding action, then it's a problem.
Yeah, turn it off.
Yeah, go do something.
And I don't think it is. I think the problem is like with M42 Adventures, what we're starting here is trying to get people who aren't in the outdoors, all aspects, golf, hiking, fishing, hunting, surfing, mountain biking, all these different avenues, facets of outdoor adventure. But then there needs to be a way for them to go and do it.
Right.
And then invite them. Right. Now, if they don't get their, schedule cleared up or their wallet out, then they can't come, but at the same time, we're going to lay out the framework. And then and that's why in our motto, it is, educate, experience, and evolve. Mm-hmm. And basically the educate part is the podcast, right. Is the, all the education that we're trying to do to let you know what we're doing and what is out there. And then experience. We put that in specifically that you have to come do it.
You have to do it.
You can't just, online experience it. You need to come and shoot a bow. You need to ride a horse. You need to go, surfing. And obviously we'll go in the correct steps and plan and then, evolve. And that's the ultimate level up.
Did you ever, did you play a lot of video games when you were a kid?
I did.
I did too. Like, I had the original
My parents
Nintendo,
hated them. Oh, my parents all the time were like, you're going to go blind.
Yeah.
You're too close to the TV, And I'm like, am I? Because that was when it was new. I loved it.
I love Nintendo.
Me too.
And
love
so
it.
I would sit there and play.
It's in that drawer right there.
Is it really?
Yeah, I have the one that has 500 games on it.
Oh, that's awesome. But then you watch kids now, and a lot of them, they actually aren't playing. They watch people play.
I know.
They don't play. They watch people play.
I have a funny story about that, though.
That's crazy to me.
I have a funny story about that.
Let me finish this thought, because this is what people do. We laugh at it, say, that's stupid. I know men who will say, that's dumb. I can't believe kids do that.
There you go.
And yet a grown man will watch a hunting video from Cam Haines, but never go on a hunt.
Absolutely.
That's no problem. Like, if you want to be entertained and watch Cam Haines hunt, that's awesome. I like watching his stuff.
Right.
Because it inspires me to go out and do it myself.
Yep.
But if you never take that second step of experience, then all you're doing is the same thing you mock your kids for doing when they're watching other little dorks play video games.
Yep. Yeah, and you answered it. That was my dad was making fun of Castle years ago, saying, look at him, he's watching a kid playing video games. And I literally turned and said, Dad, you're watching a hunting channel. And he's like, whoa. He's an old cowboy. And he's like, And I think you're absolutely right. As long as you watch, though, and not as long as, for me, as long as I'm one of those guys where I watch these videos, I watch Meat Eater, I watch these shows, I watch Danny Bolton, go spearfish. And he just posted yesterday on spearfishing, and I'm like, I'm going to do that.
You want to go do that?
I'm going to do that, and I will. And that's why I try to take in this information, is because, for me, life's the adventure.
Yeah.
So let's take a quick break from my conversation, and I wanted to talk about a couple of things that M42 Adventures has coming up this year. One is an African experience where you can come out to Africa with some of the owners of M42 Adventures, me, Ryan Michler, and you can actually hunt an animal, or you can do a photo safari. We've got helicopter tours. We're going to go give back and visit orphanages. Really try to make this an experience, not just a hunt, but something that you can come out and really experience Africa. The second thing is we've got experiences in Utah where you can come out to a 50-acre ranch, spend 4 days with us, and we're going to have just a large amount of activities: horse riding, UTVs, fly fishing, outdoor cooking, survival, archery. It's absolutely going to be amazing. So jump on those. The dates are in July, August, and September of this year. Love to meet you. Love to spend time with you. We're going to have fireside chats. We're going to work on not just the physical and outdoor activities, but as well as the mind, body, and soul, and really try to help people level up. Our motto is educate, experience, and evolve. We're going to give you the education if you're new to these things, never hunted, never shot a bow, never ridden a horse. We're going to educate you and get you to that next chapter, which is experience it and actually get on the horse and shoot the bow, whatever it is, and then evolve, level up. That's what we're all trying to do in life. Put yourself in uncomfortable situations and go to the next level. So would love to see you out there. You can go to M42Adventures.com, get more information, and let's get back to the conversation. And so
Danny's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Did he show you the video? So this was probably a year or two ago, and I may have showed you because we might have been in Hawaii. I think he was hunting sheep out there. Was it a goat or sheep? I can't remember, but anyways, he saw this and he went to draw back and it kind of ran over a ridge. So he snuck up to this ridge and he looked around and he couldn't see it. And he looked down and it was like hunkered down under the ridge, but the animal hadn't seen him. So he creeps back. He set his camera up. He put his bow down because it was too close. He knew if he drew his bow that it would spook the thing and it'd run off. He grabs his knife and he crawls up to it, it was a sheep, I'm pretty sure, grabs the sheep by the horn, and the sheep rears up and he stabs him.
That is insane.
And he
that is
stabs him
insane.
and like rolls it around.
On video.
On video.
That is insane. Because I would never believe it.
Dude.
I've hunted with you on the Big Island.
It's crazy.
With a bow. I can't kill him with a bow.
No. So
with a knife.
So he's like, I was gonna take it out, but I knew I stabbed him in the heart, so I let go, and the thing ran off, and he said it died within 20 or 30 yards.
That's a kill.
Bro,
wow. That shows you.
Ask him if he'll send you that video. I can't share it because he asked me not to share.
Yeah,
but
that's unbelievable.
It was.
Yeah, I'm not real good friends with him. I just admire, and it's not even, a lot of the guys I follow. Again, I follow a lot of the big names and stuff. But the thing I admire about Danny and the couple little short conversations I've had with him are, you know a lot about me, and I was making money and had money, and I quit and went to travel the world for 7 years. Because to me, I want to have a really good balance on, the most important thing to me is my family. That's it. My wife and kids is it. And then, and time, And so I love that about Danny. When I see when I've never met him, I've only had a few short conversations, but the vibe that I get from him is just, he's not about chasing dollar signs. He's about adventure. He's about connection with people. And, yeah, I just think he's a cool dude, man.
He is, and he lives life to the fullest.
Yeah, he does.
But I think that's what we're trying to do too with what we're doing here is, to go back to what you said earlier about guys who were wanting to get on hunts, for example, but don't know where to start. I don't know how many people I've told, just go buy $1,000 pig hunt in Texas.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's a high success ratio hunt. And you'll have a little bit of a taste, and maybe you'll like it and want to get, and that's level 1, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But there might be level 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 that you're interested in, but
it's a start.
It's a start, and I think that's a great place. But I think that's what's so cool about what we're trying to do is to create these opportunities that, because you took us to Costa Rica a couple of years ago, I wouldn't have known what to do.
Absolutely.
And it was one of my favorite vacations.
I had a friend take me to Costa Rica 2 years before that.
That's right. You told me that.
And that's how I knew, and that's life.
Yeah. So,
and if you would have went to Costa Rica, it would have cost you double the amount of money.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have gone to, me too. I wouldn't have gone to all the good spots.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly like you're doing. We want to, the purpose of M42 Adventures is to take those people that are, is the word inquisitive, into the world of adventure and outdoors, curious, and take their hand and let them experience it, and so, yeah, that's exactly what I think Danny's about. And that's what, I'm trying to do here and you're trying to do here. You're a partner on it. So yeah, it's just trying to get people outside, get off the video game. I love video games. I still play Call of Duty, I don't have a problem with it, but at some point it's better for your body. It's better for your health, your mental health, your relationships to get outside and catch a wave. Mm-hmm. Go down a big mountain in Aspen.
Use your body, right?
Yep. Yeah. Use your body. Get exercise. You're going to be healthier. You're going to, the biggest thing for me with these, I always tell people, so right now we're offering some hunts in Africa, right? And I've told several people about this. And I don't try to say you're going to Africa to hunt animals.
Mm-hmm.
I say, listen, you're going to go to Africa and it's an experience. I've tried to put my travel knowledge into it to where it's like, we're not just going to kill something. We're going to go and we're going to give back. We're going to, go on a helicopter ride. We're going to go, do these other aspects. But the biggest thing for me that I get out of every event that I've gone to your events. I'm actually going to your event. You're having an event in a couple weeks. I'm signed up for that. I'm going to meet the people at the events. That is 90% of it for me.
Right.
And that's the thing is when you go to one of our events, we've got events this fall for M42 Adventures. I know you're looking at, I'm going to go there, I'm going to shoot a bow, I'm going to ride a, horse and all these different things. But you're going to be there with, a couple dozen other like-minded individuals that are trying to improve themselves. And you never know the connection you're going to make. Most of my life now, the last few years, has been from, saying yes to your first call.
Hunts and things that we do.
And then you go there, and then, Matt from Minnesota's like, hey, come out and hunt whitetail.
Right.
And then I said to Matt, hey, come to Alaska and fish on my fishing boat. And then, hey, come to Hawaii, back to Hawaii and hunt goats.
Right.
And it's all just a snowball effect that I think people look at the immediate thing and say, this is what the flyer says. And I can't tell you what the flyer is not going to bring, and it's way more valuable than what's on that piece of paper.
Well, I mean, you go to an experience like what you're talking about, and we've hunted probably 24 times together at this point.
Yeah, a lot. We go to Hawaii in a month for a week together.
Yeah. You have that. Let's say take Hawaii. You have that 7 days, and the 7 days is great. It's a great way to escape. It's a great way to get a new perspective, to spend time with friends, to hunt. Like I
get some meat.
Get some meat. I like that aspect of it, obviously. But also then it just to your point, it builds these and forges these bonds that last a lifetime.
Absolutely.
And I think that it's 7 days for a lifetime of
Good
potential
point.
opportunity.
Yeah.
And I've seen guys that, take our relationship. Like we have a better relationship. Families know each other.
We're in business together now.
We're in business together. So opportunities present themselves through just being out, meeting people, connecting with people. And unfortunately, it's a bit of a catch-22. We have this amazing technology like we're using here, cameras, recording equipment, to be able to connect with people we never would have connected with otherwise. So that's great. The problem is that we're so connected digitally that it comes at the expense of physical connection. And I think this is something that people are really craving, even if they don't even know it. It might be subconscious that we need human interaction. There has to be the senses. Right now, it's all auditory, or maybe some visual if you're watching it on YouTube, but it's auditory mostly. But you get out into a hunt, and then there's all the senses. There's the smell, there's the taste, there's the wind blowing on your skin, and there's the physical pain that sometimes you have to endure because it didn't go right. Mm-hmm. It's including all of those senses, and that's what makes it so powerful. Is now you're tapping into everything.
Yeah,
and it's
well. And one thing that came to mind when you were telling me that is when you shot that deer at the water hole in Hawaii. And you called up and said, hey, I've hit one. I need help finding it. It just got dark on me. And I says, I'm going to come right up, you know, and then you're like, okay, this guy that, obviously we've known each other a long time, but it's like, well, now I've got this guy that's got my back.
Right.
So now I know he's a good person.
This is chupacabra up there.
And that's what I was going to get into, that's it. And so now you're like, hey, this guy's cool. He's nice. I didn't get that from Instagram. I know he's,
right,
civil, but now he's going to not go back to, camp and lay there. He's going to come out here and help me find the deer.
Yep.
And then we get up there and we're walking around in the dark and there's little eyes following us and we're like, and it's a chupacabra, we're sure, 100%. Yeah, I still know it is.
Or Bigfoot.
Yeah, freaking us out. And we're having these moments that I could never have with a full-grown man out in the woods, and we still laugh about that all the time because it was freaky.
It was scary.
And then we find your deer and then we go back to camp and we're cutting it up until midnight.
I don't think we found that one.
Did we not?
No.
Oh, yeah. We didn't.
Somebody found it the next year.
Yeah, that's right. Over the hill.
Making that happen.
Yeah, that's right.
People find my deer.
That's right.
A year later.
Yeah, that's right. I
do
remember.
Make better shots.
But then you get back to camp and you have some of the guys who, and for me it's like I go to camp with 10 guys. I don't like all 10, and that's okay. That's life. 3 of them I don't like. 4 of them I can deal with, and 3 of them I'm like, you're my dude.
Yeah.
Like we're gonna go to Alaska together. I want to hang out with you more, and that's what I think is as you expose yourself to these, retreats or these hunts or anything, like get out there. My wife has a community and, and she, a lot of women in there, like, we just don't know how to meet people. And she's like, you don't have to go to a retreat necessarily. You can go, down to the park.
Right.
And just
talk to somebody. You have to talk
You
to
have
somebody.
to open up, and for me, it's so natural that I don't understand it. But for some of those people that are held back, it's like, man, open your mouth and your world will open up.
Well, I think that even with guys in particular, something as simple, and I hear this a lot. Well, we don't know where all the guys are. I'm like, yeah, you do. They're at the gym.
Right. Yeah.
They're in business meetings.
Right.
And you know what? It costs little to nothing to go engage in one of those things.
Yep.
You could sign up for a jiu-jitsu class tonight. Like when I moved back to Utah, I started going back to jiu-jitsu. It's been a little while, but I started to go back, and immediately there was 3 or 4 guys that I kind of knew just from before, but we just reconnected. And then that weekend they invited me to go to some fights here.
Yeah. Boom. You're in.
One night of just like rolling with these guys, spending a little time. They're like, hey, come to the fights.
Yeah.
I couldn't make it to the fights, but
right. You got the invite.
I got the invite.
You wouldn't have got the invite if you sat at home and said, man, nobody likes me.
I've always thought like this little thought experiment that I've had is that if you were to drop me in the middle of somewhere where I didn't know a single soul, like no connections, no money, just drop me there. How long would it take me to entrench myself in the community?
Yeah.
Not very long.
No.
Because like you said, willing to open your mouth, willing to introduce yourself, willing to go where people are. Yeah. Willing to add value, try to formulate connections, and be a contributing member of the society that you're in.
Yeah, I think you get a lot of that on travel. So when I traveled,
you're good at that.
At our first trip, it's nerve-wracking. We went to France, and we ended up going into Italy, and we went to a park, and my boys are like 6 and 3 or something like that. My 6-year-old comes up and he says, I can't play with these kids. I don't speak their language. And I says, figure it out. You don't have to talk to be friends. And he's like, what? And I'm like, well, maybe, I don't know. It's an experiment.
Yeah. We'll let you try it. I don't know if it
works. Yeah. And so I says, go over there and show him what you got. Just show him. You can't tell him. And so he had Pokemon cards. So he goes over and he pulls out his Pokemon cards and they're like, oh, and they start saying, in Italian what, and he's like, yeah. And he runs home. He gets his Pokemon cards in Italian. Oh, really? They start trading.
They have Italian Pokemon cards?
Okay. And so they start trading. And so now my boy has Italian Pokemon cards. Then the next day they invited him to play soccer. And I'm sitting on, I remember it vividly. I'm at this little church in Cinque Terre. And I'm sitting on the ground. And my little boy's playing around. He's young and he's just kind of wandering around. And my 6-year-old, 7-year-old is playing soccer in a soccer game with these little Italian kids. And I thought, life's beautiful. And it's because he went out of his comfort zone. He made the effort. 99 out of 100 times people reciprocate. They might get the one kid that's like, whoa, he's weird or whatever, but most of the kids are going to welcome you. And that's what I found all over the world. 62 countries I've been to. I've never met an asshole. And that shocks people. I really, in the city and stuff, you'll have somebody flip you off if you cut them off.
Yeah, but
you get out to a village. Exactly. But you get out to a little village, and that's where I like to go, is out into the little village. Everybody is so kind. Yeah. Almost, just pinching my kids' cheeks and handing us a loaf of fresh made bread and inviting us into their homes, Yeah. And it's amazing. It just made me really have, you see the news and it's so.
I mean, look though, and I have to say this.
Oh, here we go. Devil's advocate.
No, it's in a positive way. I'm going to pay you a compliment.
Okay.
What you're saying, I believe, has been your experience, but you're also very, very good at connecting with people, relating and connecting with people. Yeah. And if there's a skill that you have, I've seen it. I've seen you do it in person. Yeah. And it's good for me. It's been a good lesson for me. Yeah. Of how to be personable, how to be curious about people, how to ask questions, how to add value, how to make conversation. These are things that a lot of people, even people listening to this podcast, would like to do, but they don't have any experience with it. They're afraid of it. So I agree. I believe that is your experience, but also I think the reason from the outside looking in is because of who you are and how you show up. And there's a real valuable lesson for all of us to be learned from that. That's a good point. I was just in Hawaii and me and Gina went out kayaking to this island, and Gina's good at it too. Yeah. Yeah. And we were getting up to this island. It's sketchy to get onto, the waves come from both sides and everybody knows it can be bad.
And we go paddling up and we get through the waves pretty good. And she hops out and I'm in the back and it's a pretty steep beach. And so I'm 6'5", trying to get out of this canoe, and I roll over and I'm on my knees and she's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, and it's, this is within 5 seconds. Okay. She's like, "Are you good?" And I'm like, "I'm good." And I turn and she was coming over to help me, but she's on the opposite side of the canoe and this wave comes.
Oh, is that how you got cut?
No.
Okay.
It didn't get me. It just kind of bumped me, but they took the 150-pound canoe and she front flips.
Oh, dang.
It swiped her legs out and she just flipped. And I was like, holy cow, like that just, decimated you. And I forgot the point of the story, actually. Lost my train of thought.
I don't know.
I can't remember. I was going with that. Yeah. Anyway.
We were talking about your ability to relate with people and connect with people, and the valuable lesson to be learned in that, and why you've had a good experience with other people. That's what we were talking about.
Yeah. I don't remember where I was going with it. Well, look at that. Right when you tell me I'm good to like communicate with people, I messed it up. So
yeah, but you know what? People don't care about that.
Yeah. No.
It's just your humanity. And I've actually realized that even just through a podcast. Mm-hmm. A lot of guys will attempt to make themselves appear smarter, more intelligent, or have things put together.
Yeah, you're putting on a show.
Mm-hmm. But the more that I share my struggles, I don't know if it is that just people like seeing me struggle, or probably more correctly is that they see themselves in the struggle.
Yeah.
If I portray this guy who has everything figured out and I can't be beaten and there's no downside to my life. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to watch and it's entertaining, but a lot of men have a hard time relating with that because then they look at themselves and they're like, well, shit, my life's not like that. What's wrong with me?
Yeah.
Well, nothing's wrong with
They always see the wins.
Right. So the more relatable a person can be, either through a podcast or like you're saying, I've seen you make fun of yourself with people.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what makes you likable.
Oh, yeah.
If you were arrogant and condescending and acted as if you knew everything and bragged about your adventures, your wealth or whatever, people wouldn't want to talk with you.
Yeah.
But they'd like to talk with you because you're a real person, willing to share real experiences like that. There, you talk about tipping in your kayak.
Yeah. Oh, dude,
right?
It front flipped her. I actually remember I was going with that. So, yeah, it flips her over, and we were telling my buddy the next day. I was telling him the story. And you know my stories. I mean, it's probably
Hilarious.
like 70% truth, 30% embellishment, That's probably
generous.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Again, I'm telling you the story. But we went out to dinner with my buddy out over there in Hawaii, Kalani, and his wife, and I was telling him the story, it was funny because I tell the story and I'm just so animated, and I tell every little detail how I tell them. And we get walking back to the hotel, and Gina says, that your stories are so funny. She's like, I was there.
They are funny.
And she's like, that was 10 times funnier than whatever happened. And I thought, it's funny how I actually thought of a cousin of mine who's an awesome person and a very good dude, but he's just quiet.
Right.
And that story would have been, hey, we went on an island. My wife got hit by a canoe, hurt her leg.
The end.
Right. And my personality is it's just funny how I go and just run with it. And it's like you were saying, where with my travels, that's probably some truth to that, where, I that's arrows in my quiver that I don't even know that I carry.
Well, I think it's also, it's so relatable. And I often hear from, I work with men pretty much exclusively within my organization. And a lot of these guys, they have a hard time connecting with people, and they're wondering why. I'm like, well, tell me something interesting about yourself. And it's just crickets.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because what do most of these guys do, right? They're in a dead-end job they're not happy with. Up to 80% of the United States workforce is dissatisfied in some way with their current occupation.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's
8 out of 10.
It's probably on the low side now. So they go into these miserable jobs. Their marriage is mediocre. They're probably not getting the sex they want. Their kids are misbehaving. There's no connection with their kids. They're not coaching their teams. They have no hobbies. They have no interests, activities, or pursuits. They have no purpose or passion in their lives. Mm-hmm. And so when you ask somebody to tell me something interesting, it's like,
yeah, that's sad.
It is
that's sad.
But that's
reality.
You're interesting.
Yeah.
Because you go on experiences.
Right.
Whether you go on a hunt or go on a safari or go up to the mountains for the weekend and hit a cabin and enjoy.
Yeah.
Not only is it good for your soul, it actually makes you a more likable person.
Yeah.
Because now you're more interesting. You know, if you're in the dating world, for example, and you have nothing interesting to share, well, good luck. Like you're not intriguing or fascinating at all.
Yeah.
But if you can sit and talk about hunting and talk about the experiences that you've been on and talk about travel, that's going to excite her because you're now an interesting person.
Yeah.
And that's in the dating world, but that applies in business.
Yeah.
You know, if you're going in for a job interview and everything that you have ever share is just boring and monotonous and lame, like you're not going to get the job.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But if you have different experiences, different cultural backgrounds or beliefs and different ideas, and you have different places that you've worked and experiences that you've had, and you can articulate that in a powerful way, makes you a likable, hireable person.
You know, it's funny you say that. I actually have a buddy of mine who he always says, you know, Rick, you like everything. You know, you do everything. You like everything. And he actually called me one time and says, he's very successful, way more successful than me financially.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, man, I need a hobby, Rick. I'm just bored.
Yeah.
And he says, you're doing everything, you know. And I says, well, yeah, let's go ride a dirt bike. That doesn't sound fun. Let's go do
This is what I'm
this.
saying.
And I gave him like 6 things that I enjoy. And let's go hunting. I don't want to kill an animal. I'm like, okay, let's go. And I went home and I says, I'm grateful. One of my biggest, you know, things that I'm grateful for is my love, sincere love to go try things.
Yeah.
And it's a weird thing to think, but I'm sure you face that a lot where you talk to these men and you say, I can show you the light. You know, I've got, 100 employees with my companies over here and they all see my life and they're like, hey, we want your life. We want to do it. And I'm like, my door's open.
Yeah.
Come on
how
in.
you do it.
They come in and I'm like, here's how I did it. And they're like, oh, that's too hard. I don't want to. I got to work hard for years. I got to save for years. And they go right back. And it's like, it's like your child. You go to your child and you're like, I can tell you right now how to be great. Don't do this. Don't do that. Don't do this.
Yeah,
and
they'll still do everything.
And it's just so hard,
It's hard. I mean, you do.
But we
have
got to learn,
just,
I guess.
Well, people have to learn. People have to make their own decisions. You know, everybody's got authority and autonomy over their own lives. And so, as somebody who wants to see people succeed, you have to have some level of separation and just say, hey, I'm going to share. I'll give you ideas. But yeah, that's frustrating when you've got a guy who's like, I want to get a hobby. And he's like, well, I don't want to kill an animal. Well, then just come hunt. Like, just come with me and you can help me.
You have to pull the trigger.
Right. Or, let's go dirt biking. Well, that doesn't sound fun. Well, how do you know? You've never done it before.
Absolutely.
So go out there for a day. What's the worst that's going to happen? You're going to spend 3, 4, 5 hours out there. You're going to be hot and miserable. And then you're not going to do it again.
Check it off the list. Move on.
Or maybe you actually really like it.
Right.
And you decide, hey, you know what? I'm going to do this again. And then after your 4th, 5th, 6th time, you're like, I think I'll buy a dirt bike. And you go buy a bike. And then you learn how to work on a bike. And then who knows? Maybe you start doing custom builds for some friends.
Right.
And then that turns into a business, all because you said yes. And there has to be, it's interesting. For some people, they have to have a default no mentality, and for other people, they have to have a default yes.
Yeah.
So for the no people, they have to default to yes, and for the yes people, they have to default to no.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, it becomes a problem. You're probably more of a default yes, so I can see you getting in over your head at times because you take on too much.
100%.
So it's not bad; it just is. It's just the risk of your default mentality. But for guys who are like, I don't have any hobbies, I'm not interested, this is lame, life sucks. That's because you're a default no guy.
Yeah.
So maybe learn to say yes to a few things with no expectation.
Yeah, and that's the big thing. Don't go into it and just say, look, cause like when you're saying that, I have a buddy who I went to high school with who I invited to go ride dirt bikes. And I raced him. So I was on a track. And he came out and he's like, I don't like this. It's just, I'm not a big jumper guy. And I'm like, okay. Well, 2 years later, I ran into him and I'm like, hey, man, what are you up to? His name's Brian. And he's like, dude, I'm into, like, he takes those light bikes and like hops up rocks. And it's like have you seen that?
Yeah.
Where they it's talent, not just bombing it over a triple like I used to try to do.
Yeah, they're like climbing rocks with mountain bikes.
Yeah, he goes out and hops up logs and, and he loves it. And he says, thanks for getting me into dirt bikes. And I'm like, well, I don't even know what that is. And he's like, well, it led to this.
Right.
And that's the thing. It's like somebody might come and do archery and be like, man, I did not like that. But they're like, I liked, when we went over and hiked this waterfall and I liked, snorkeling and I might try spearfishing. And it's like, well, you got into spearfishing on a trip to hunt, deer in Hawaii. It's like, you just never know where something's going to lead. And I think the more times you put yourself in those positions,
yeah, just give yourself,
increases your odds.
It's like in sports, you know, as like give yourself the at bat.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't know what's gonna happen. You know, my second son's playing baseball right now, and I really like watching him play. And I was talking with a friend of mine, and one of their teammates came up to bat, and I'm like, this guy, guarantee this guy gets on base. Guarantee it.
Just tell by his
I just know he played for me last year.
Oh, okay.
He's just and he's like, how? I'm like, I don't know, but he'll get on base. And he gets, I think it was like close to a full count or whatever, and he hits it, or he swings, and I'm like, oh, he struck out, but the catcher drops the ball. If the catcher drops the ball, he has to actually throw it to first.
Oh,
he has to throw out the runner.
Okay.
If he drops the ball,
it's a live play.
It's a yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that.
If the catcher drops the ball on the third strike, he has to throw it to first or tag the runner. You can do that too.
Okay.
The batter. And so the catcher fumbles it around, and this guy just gasses it and just runs to first. Catcher threw to first, overthrow, gets on. And I look at the guy, I'm like, see?
That's rad.
And he's like, well, how did you know? I'm like, I just know that he's somebody who makes things happen.
Yeah.
Like, I would have never guessed that he was going to get on base because the catcher dropped the ball on the third strike. But he's somebody who makes things happen.
And you'll have all those people in the stands that say he got lucky.
No,
and it's like, no, he knew what to do, when to do it. He, you know, it's like I would have been like, you know, I don't play baseball, so I'd have been like, well, I'm out.
Yeah.
And he would have just touched me, and you know, but he knew everything, and he knew how to put it together, and he's on base, and that's it, man. Get on base.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how you do it.
Chance.
Give your chance. Be ready, you know, and when somebody drops the ball, go.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's a cool story.
Yeah, it's interesting to see people who have that mentality versus those who don't, because then there's the other people who are like, oh, nothing ever goes my way, and nothing ever comes together, and if it weren't for bad luck, I wouldn't have luck at all.
Yep.
That's a loser mentality. It's not that that's happening. I actually believe that's happening to you.
Oh yeah.
Like, I believe you're down on your luck. I believe that bad things are happening to you, but it's not some and you know, universe that doesn't care about you is like stacking all the cards against you. You're creating that.
100%.
Your attitude is making people not like you.
Yep.
Which means you're not going to get opportunities, which means people are going to ask you to do things, which means you're not going to make as much money, which means women don't like you and they don't want to go on dates with you. It's not the universe, it's you.
Yep.
And you're creating your environment.
It's so funny they can't see that. You know, I've gone on, you know, trips with guys, and you know, their snowboard doesn't show up, and they just, like you said, they fall apart. They turn negative, and we're like, we're not going to invite this guy back. You know, he's just a downer.
I know.
Whereas he could have been like, well, my board didn't. I have the other friend who's like, well, my board didn't show up. I'm going to rent one. He rents one. He's like, dude, this board is sick. It's the new model. I'm going to go buy it. I'm glad my other board. And it's like, you know, you're the sum of the 5 people you hang around.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, those people, you know, just that.
Do you remember hunting with Sean Villalobos in Hawaii?
Yeah.
And he shot 3 or 4 deer.
Yeah.
And I didn't shoot. I don't think that year anybody shot anything
Yeah.
else. Maybe you.
Yeah. Me and Brandon got that one.
That's
Oh,
right.
and I got the one from actually got 2.
That's
but
right.
yeah,
But he
Brandon
shot Sean
shot
like 4 deer. And everybody's
Dude.
like, oh, he's in the right spot and this. And I'm like, bro,
nope.
that guy slung probably 3 dozen arrows.
Yep.
And which, I mean, not a great shot necessarily,
Right.
but he slung 3.
Yeah.
But he is a good shot. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I don't know if you ever saw him
We're all running
everywhere.
I remember
He's like,
being
ding, ding, ding. I'm like, who is this guy? Because I didn't know him real well at the time. He's awesome.
He's awesome. I was on a point over by Scott by the big high fence, and you had your spot down there with him.
Yeah.
By the high fence. We were on that corner.
Yep.
And you're like 300 yards away. And I, you know, you can see the groups of deer, they come in like herds of like 40 or 50 at a time.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking at you with my binos, and I see you like climbing up the rock, going up the rock, like you're moving around trying to get to the spot. And then I see you pull back and shoot. And I remember being like, oh my gosh. And I love just watching
hilarious.
it. And then I remember looking beyond you and just seeing Sean running. And I'm like, the bro's going to chase down the deer. Like, what are you doing, man? You know, and he just dead sprint running. And then remember, I tried it the next day.
Yeah.
So I tried running after one, remember?
Yeah.
And I popped my whatever. And that's a story for another day. But I tried that tactic, and it didn't work for me because I'm old.
Man.
But dude, yeah.
I think that underscores the point, though. Is like, you could come back and say, well, how did he get so lucky? How did he get all the shots? And how did he get the right spot? And because he created it.
Yeah. I hate the victim mentality.
I hate it. I hate it. Guys will say that happens in the hunting world a lot. Oh, he was just lucky because he was in that spot. Bro, that guy's been hunting. Here's a story. I have a friend of mine. His name's Ryan. He's in Maine. A couple of years ago, he shot if I remember right, it scored the third highest scoring deer in Maine.
Wow.
And I can't remember.
Whitetail, right?
Whitetail.
Wow.
And I can't remember if it was for that year.
Yeah, that's insane.
It was a nice deer. And I can't remember if it was that year or a different year. But one year, he walked out onto his back porch, saw a really nice buck, went inside, grabbed his rifle, and shot this deer off this back porch and shot a really nice buck.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, oh, you're so lucky. Bro, that guy has 10 times the amount of time in the woods that you do.
Right.
Just because he happened to be in the right place at the right time.
Right.
Doesn't mean that it's all luck.
You don't just take away everything.
He has put so much time in the field, and you can't extrapolate one experience and say it's lucky. You have to look at the entirety of the picture.
100%.
He's been hunting for decades and decades since he was a little boy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, sometimes it works out like that.
Yeah.
But if you don't put yourself in that position or that opportunity, here's the way it could have gone.
Yeah.
Let's say he saw the deer. He walked out, was having coffee, saw the deer, but he doesn't shoot.
And that's what I thought. I thought his gun's not ready.
Right.
You know,
his gun it's not sighted in.
Yeah.
He goes out and he makes a bat, or maybe he's drunk and he's like not in the position and he makes a shot and it's like doesn't work.
Yeah.
It could have gone so many different ways, but there's factors in play that are hard to see and quantify that made that actually
100%,
successful.
100%. My dad always says that about me. You know, I do pretty well in Hawaii.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I'm one of those guys that like analyzes it. And I'm like, Dad, why did I get, more deer than everybody? And he's like, Rick, I just watch you. And he's like, you just do things different. He's like, I'll see like deer coming in. And he says, I've watched you the other day and I thought I would do this. Why is he on his belly crawling around this way? And, and then he says, and then they come over and you shoot. And he's like, why did you do that? And I'm like, well, I have branches over here. If I would have gone that way, there was a tree that I couldn't even have gotten a shot.
Right.
And he's like, you just do things where I watch you a lot of times and you just go left when somebody else would have went right.
Yeah.
And he's like, but that's because you've probably gone left 10 times and realized left didn't work. And you're going to try this.
Plus you also love animals.
Yeah.
Like I see the way, because you love it.
Oh, I love it.
Remember when we were in Costa Rica and you and Brecken mostly were like chasing crabs down?
Yeah, yeah.
Like you were like a kid.
Yeah, I am.
And
I'm bad about that.
Or not bad. It's awesome.
Yeah. I was actually in Costa Rica with my buddy. And what are those things called?
Those little
like cat things.
I was thinking about that the other day.
It's like a coati. Coati.
That's right.
So I'd never seen them. So I'm in the lead car and I'm driving. It's with my friends that took me a couple years before you. And I come around this turn and there's signs, don't feed them, whatever, and I'm like, okay. I pull around the turn and there's like 20 of them in the road and there's no cars, nobody around. And I'm like, oh my gosh, should we pull up? And I have some jerky, and I'm like, I'm going to feed these buggers, So I start throwing out jerky and stuff, and they come and are like climbing on our minivan and like covering it. And my kids are in there and they're like, this is amazing, And I'm like, tell me about it, and I'm filming, and they start like reaching in, like pulling on my steering wheel and stuff, and cars start pulling up and they're filming it, and other people are getting out, and we're all having a great time. And my buddy Nick comes around the corner, and by now there's like 8 cars stopped. And he comes walking up and he says, I told Jessica $100 this damn traffic jam is because of Rick. Because he couldn't even see the animals. He's around a turn. And so he comes around the turn, sees all the animals on a minivan, and he's like, bro, I knew it was you. And I'm like, this is amazing. He's like, they're probably rabid. Get them away from me. He like doesn't like them. And I'm like, you're such a baby, like teasing him. But I've just been that way my whole life, man. Watching your boys catch crabs.
Oh, so fun.
Like, I love it. And it's probably one of their favorite memories. And everybody thinks it's like, it's going to be the $500 ziplining day.
No.
My boys, man, they love digging crabs out of holes. It's like that's.
When we went on that little nighttime little walk with all the frogs.
Yeah, free.
That was awesome.
Yeah, and they did, and went up that tower.
Yeah, that tower was cool.
And that's all free.
Right.
And so, yeah.
But I think that takes, like, I didn't know, I wouldn't have gone there. Who would know to go there?
Yeah.
It was out of the way. Remember how far out of the way? I mean, it was a ways out of the way.
Yeah.
But you had gone before, and I guess maybe to tie this into what we're trying to do with M42 is, how's anybody going to know? When somebody says, hey, I want to get into hunting, like, yeah, go on a pig hunt. They're like, what does that mean? Where, when, how, why, all this. It's like, oh, here, let me.
It's taken care of.
Right.
Yeah.
Or they want to, do a Costa Rican trip or an African safari or just even something locally, whether it's, getting together over, an extended weekend and learning about survival or horseback riding or fly fishing.
Yeah.
Like, nobody knows.
Absolutely.
What's interesting is this happens a lot. I think more probably with men than women is people, society will make fun of men for not knowing.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
yeah.
Oh, you don't know how to change the oil in a car? What an idiot.
Yeah.
And so they'll mock a guy who's supposed to know something, who never learned. How would he know?
Yeah.
And then when a guy goes to figure it out, to invest in it, to learn about it, to spend time on it, they'll say, oh, I can't believe you're taking time
Mocked
to learn
again.
how to do that.
Yeah.
Like, you should already know how to do that. You're an idiot.
Yeah.
It's like, well, what would you have me do? You're going to make fun of me for not knowing because I'm not being a man. But then when I actually go to assert myself and spend money, you say I'm stupid and I'm an idiot and I shouldn't do that?
Yeah.
Like, which is it?
Yeah, which is it? Yeah, good point.
I think one stigma that guys need to get over is, like, I was primarily raised by my mom. I had a couple men come into my life as stepfathers that weren't great examples of what it meant to be a man.
Okay.
And so I didn't learn how to do stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to change the oil on my car. I didn't know how to shoot a bow or a gun. I didn't learn how to do any of that growing up. I wasn't really around it. And I have a lot of guys who are like that. Well, Ryan, what should I do? Well, you should learn what you should have learned then.
Right.
And you can do it now.
Yeah.
And it takes resources like we're trying to provide and other resources that are available and yourself to just exert yourself and be willing to look a little foolish and look a little dumb.
Yeah.
In the quest for a new experience, a new skill set.
Right.
And just life.
Yeah. Yeah, I've talked to a lot of people about, my financial story, so when I, making a little bit of money and then lost everything in the recession and have earned it back, and so I'll get talking to people and, they're like, hey, we see you successful now. And so they'll start talking to me and they'll say, I need some help. I need some help with my finances. And I'm like, okay, let's dive into it. Let's go. And they hold back and they all do. They're embarrassed. And I'm like, listen, man, I have been broke. I have, been to where I couldn't feed my family and had to borrow money from my grandpa. I mean, I've lost my home. They repossessed my cars. Yeah. And then they open up. And that's who I think make the best coaches, is these people who, come out and they say, it's okay. My dad, he's got horses. He's had horses his whole life. And when people come up and they're like, I'm afraid to pet it, he doesn't tease them.
Right.
Why? He's like, I'm sure it's scary. It's a big animal.
It's a huge animal in your face.
And that's the kind of people that I want around me is, I, like you said, this is selfish. I started M42s and then brought you on as a partner because I want to do these things. It's like, I know how to shoot a bow, but I don't know how to, to be around a horse and saddle it and, load it and ride it, well. And so I'm going to be a beginner at a lot of these retreats and things we do. I've never been to Africa. You're going to Africa in August with us. And we've never been.
Never been. Yeah.
It's going to be a new experience. Right. My dad says it's totally different than how we hunt over here. And to think that for me, it's just, I'm confident. So to think that anybody could shame me, it's like, you can't. But those people that can be, it's like, don't let that in.
No way.
Come out. I told my kid the other day, he plays football and he's on 7-on-7. And that's like a running, passing league, right?
Yeah, high action.
Yeah, there's not an offensive line and a defensive line. And there's these little kids on his team. We went over there and he, signs up and we get on the team. And there's a couple of kids that are just big boys, And we get home and he's like, well, we're going to lose, we got these couple kids that are just, they can't run, they can't catch. And I says, shame on you, Castle. I says, listen, you should respect those boys more than anybody else out on that field. These kids are aware.
They know that
they are big. They are aware that they are good offensive linemen. They're good defensive linemen. They know they're not a, cornerback or a wide receiver, but they're out there trying. And they're out there doing their best to keep up with a kid that's, way faster.
Like you, yeah, right.
And he says, so you should go up to that kid next practice and say, hey, I respect you being here. I respect you showing up. And he did. He went up to him and says, hey, Jose, I respect you coming out here and doing this. I know it's not your he could hit a guy and put him down.
Right.
But he says, I respect you for coming out here and playing. And the kid says, thank you, Castle. And it's like, that's what life's about.
Yeah, man.
Like, pick them up.
That's awesome.
To push them down, shame on you.
Yeah.
So yeah. Are we about, what's our time at, Rick?
Hour 10.
So yeah, probably should wrap it up.
We were going to talk about this hat.
Dude, I could talk to you forever, man.
I saw this hat.
Yeah, I know.
I was like, what is that?
I know.
You said it's your grandpa's, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
This is awesome.
Yeah. So that's the hat that he hunted in. I always remember, as a kid, you're like, what is that, man? That is just a goofy hat.
Do you wear it backwards or forwards?
Yeah. I don't wear it. I
don't wear it?
No.
You should wear it.
I should.
That
I
would
actually
go with
should.
some of the shit I've seen you wear.
Yeah, that would probably. Yeah. No, he just wore it, man, and he passed away a few years ago, and it's funny because, when you we'll actually get into this on the next podcast, but I was actually supposed to go to Africa with him right before he passed away, and it didn't work out. And when you lose people and you just can't get them back, man, it's like, dude, I always smell it, and it's like, it just brings it back, man.
That's what we were talking about, those senses, right?
Oh, dude. And he went on so many trips with me in the end. The last decade we went to Alaska. I mean, all over the world. He would come out and go with us. I was just in Hawaii for a week, and there was a place we always stayed there, and it was right below my hotel. And I sat on the deck almost every morning, just tears in my eyes, and it's like, take the damn trip, figure it out, and it doesn't have to be.
Yes.
What's that?
That's that default yes we were talking about.
Yeah, because man, my sister actually, I talked at my grandpa's funeral, and she came up to me after after my speech talk, and she was crying, and she says she was supposed to come up to Alaska a few years earlier, and they decided that they were going to landscape their yard instead. And she came up and she was crying, and she says, I have so many regrets. And I says, Kim, I'm sorry. I can't fix that, and I'm sorry, but going forward, mom and dad are getting older. Just like you said, get the bat back on the shoulder and swing and go.
Yeah.
And, I think a lot of people today put priorities on things and, trucks or, motorcycles
Material
and
possessions.
stuff.
Yeah.
And I just put them on memories. For me, it's just memories, man. It's like I wouldn't trade a lot of it. So, yeah, dude, I have this hat in my... I just shot that elk last year. Grandpa couldn't make it, and my dad was there, and that's what hunting's about for me, man. And all the things I do, it's. I actually teased my dad about mounting animals. I didn't understand it. I wasn't a big hunter, and I didn't understand. I says, "Why are you mounting these animals?" And now that I've got, you were with me when you were in Hawaii with me when I shot the axis deer, those mounts over there, my grandpa's from Africa. I had, this hunt right here was for 3 weeks. I had 22 different people hunt with me over 3 weeks. I invited everybody, and I passed up on bigger bulls because I knew this person was coming and this person was flying in. So I had 22 different people, Wayne, Chris. I mean, they came up for like 2 days, one night. I can make it for 2 nights.
Right.
Overall, I had 22 people with me. The day I shot it, I had my dad, uncle, and a good family friend with me in the truck. And that, is a memory I'll never forget, right?
It's a memory.
So, yeah, to me, it's so ingrained.
That, and for me, it's just like stories, stories.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
You and I, like, we laugh about things, and people are like, why are they laughing? Because you weren't there.
Yeah.
You would have had to be there
Yeah.
to laugh the way that we are.
Yeah.
And you should be there.
Yeah.
With us or with your own
100%.
people.
100%.
But, like, yeah, go out and create those memories because we don't have a whole lot of time. I mean, I said I'm 43 years old. If I lived average life expectancy, I'm over 50% of my life.
Yep. And the last 10, will probably be rough.
Yeah. So
and your knees start going, your back start going.
yeah.
Lots of people get down to that. They always say you work your best 40 years of life away, hoping you have, 10 to 12 at the end to enjoy it. And like I said, I've been traveling for the last 7 years. All we ever see 9 out of 10 times is old people, and they're struggling to go up the steps. They're struggling to carry their luggage. We go to the Coliseum, and they're like, yeah, we just went halfway because we were out of breath, dragging their oxygen tanks, whatever it is, and it's like, man, just, try to figure it out. And it doesn't have to be the Coliseum. It can be a camping trip up the road. That's what I tell people. It's like, go have a barbecue. People, it doesn't have to be money. So yeah.
Cool, man.
Well, man, I appreciate you coming here for our first podcast.
Yeah.
We didn't get a lot into the details, but
We will.
M42 Adventures, you're a partner on it.
Yeah.
I sincerely appreciate you. You've been a mentor of mine, the last few
Likewise,
years.
yeah.
I like what you're doing. I like your message, Order of Man. People need to check it out. Is the Iron Council open right now?
No, we open back up in June.
June.
Yeah, June.
So
a couple months.
Yeah. So people pay attention to that. It's just limited. I know you do that for the reason of getting everybody on the same page at the same time. And I think that's a smart play, but read your books.
Yeah.
I've read both of them. I love them. I just like what you're doing. I like people who aren't sayers, they're doers.
Yeah.
There's so many people out there. I've told people I'm going to start a podcast. I'm going to start an outdoor company. And they're like, okay, so is everybody else. And I'm like, I don't care. This life to me is a journey. It's an experience.
Right.
This is fun. This is way funner than what I did a few years ago.
Yeah.
I don't need to work. I don't need a job. So this is a passion.
Mm-hmm.
And if it doesn't make $1 million or millions of dollars, I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm going to meet some cool people. I'm going to Africa this year with you. I'm going to Hawaii this year with you.
Yep. Yeah, we're gonna have some cool adventures.
We got some retreats coming up.
Yeah.
So, is there a way for people to find you? How do people?
Yeah, I mean, Order of Man wherever you like. If you want to
listen to your podcast.
listen
Your
to the
podcast is. I mean, you've
Yeah.
had some.
I mean, it's great.
The
We've done
people
over
you've
1,000
had.
episodes.
Is that
at
what
this
it is?
point.
I was telling Ricky. I'm
Maybe
like,
like 1,100.
dude, that's
It's crazy.
insane,
It's
dude.
so crazy.
Because you do 3 a week.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna do 1 a week.
I've thought about even doing a fourth one.
Are you serious?
I don't know how serious I am.
Dude, that's
right now,
hardcore.
but I might.
Is 1 a week okay
1 a week's good
for me? Is that
It doesn't matter.
'Kay.
Like if it's 1 a week or 1 a month,
just be consistent?
just be consistent.
Yeah.
If you say 1 a week, then do 1 a week.
Okay. So yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Is I'll do 1 a week for now.
Yeah, and
just,
you could always add it.
that's what I mean. I don't want to get too crazy, and so yeah, we'll do 1 a
It's
week.
easier. It's better to add one than it is to take away one.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
people get used to it.
Yeah.
Eventually, they're going to say, "Hey, like I've had people like I have not missed a podcast in over 9 years." Of
That's
doing it.
unbelievable.
Not one.
I don't know.
I will say there's been maybe a handful that have been repeat podcasts that
Mm-hmm.
I published just because I was going through some personal stuff. But we've released every single episode.
That's crazy.
And I've had people like some days I might post it a little late. Like one time I almost forgot and I posted it at 10, but then I checked my email or my messages and a bunch of people were like, "Hey, do you have a podcast coming out today?"
Oh wow. Yeah.
Because they're expecting one
Yeah.
to come out.
Yeah.
So that consistency. Is
Yeah.
huge.
Well, in 9 years, you've got them hooked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, so Order a Man, and then Ryan Michler on Instagram is where I'm most active.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And you're on all the social media. I mean,
All
you
the
do it all, don't
platforms.
you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
all the
Listen to your podcast.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, thanks, brother. I appreciate
Thank
you,
you,
man.
man. Appreciate it.
Excited for our this is just the start.
Yeah.
So let's go.
Excited about it.
All right, brother. Okay, well, so thanks for listening to the second episode of the M42 Adventures podcast. That was my conversation with Ryan Michler. Again, just a great individual. Every time I speak with him, honestly, he's very good at what he does. He's very well thought out. He's interviewed thousands of people, and he's always teaching me something. So I'm grateful for the time we had together. That's a big reason I started this podcast, was to, simply selfish reasons, is to sit down with these high achievers and people who are actually out there doing things and not just saying them, and being able to spend time with him and have that conversation was amazing. And I'm very grateful for that. Again, if you get a chance, check out Ryan Michler, at Ryan Michler on Instagram, Order a Man on Instagram. Check out the Iron Council. It's going to open up in June. He limits that. And so it's closed right now, but memberships will be opening up in June, he said. So I encourage you to jump on that if you get the opportunity. Read his books. Again, that was Sovereignty and the Masculinity Manifesto, 2 great books that I've read and applied in my life best I can. So I want to thank Ryan for coming out today. Great conversation. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please let people know. You can go find M42 Adventures on all social media platforms. You can go to our website, www.m42adventures.com. And please like and share if you enjoyed it. And we are new. We're just starting out. We got big plans. We're excited about this. Ryan is mentoring us and helping us lead the charge. And very grateful for that. So thank you, Ryan, for coming out. Hope you guys enjoyed. And have a great day. Go make it a good one.